Welcome to the class where tech takes the lead. Adam Todd here with just what you need. Teachers everywhere, let's elevate the game. With digital tools, we'll never be the same. In this podcast, we'll uncover the trends, from apps to gadgets on which we depend. Connect with your students in ways so fresh, innovative minds put to the test. In this podcast, we'll uncover the trends, from apps to gadgets on which we depend. Connect with your students in ways so fresh, innovative minds put to the test. Classroom dynamics where we all unite. Education future shining bright, with Adam Todd guiding us through. Teachers' paradise coming true.
Classroom Dynamics is supported by Logitech. As education continues to evolve, so does Logitech Education, your partner in content creation for the classroom. With Logitech's cutting-edge technology, students not only learn but also become content creators. Whether it's in person or online, Logitech's tools are designed to inspire educators and learners alike. Capture every educational moment in stunning detail and edit, produce, and share your creative journey with ease. Logitech Education, inspiring the next generation of creators. For more, visit logitech.com/education, transforming classrooms one innovation at a time. Welcome to Classroom Dynamics, the podcast where we get into the exciting world of technology and education. Hi everybody, I'm your host Adam Todd, and on the show today we're jumping into a critical conversation about the intersection of human intelligence and artificial intelligence and where those crossroads lead. The rise of AI is transforming every aspect of our lives, especially the future of work. As machines become more capable, it's the uniquely human skills like creativity, empathy, adaptability, and problem solving that will define success in this new era. That's the mission of the Human Intelligence Movement, to ensure that every learner is equipped to thrive in an AI-driven world by prioritizing these human-centered skills. In today's episode, we'll explore what human intelligence truly means, the challenges of a traditional education system that still emphasizes rote learning, and why we must reimagine education to focus on active application, cross-contextual understanding, and solving real-world problems. To help us unpack these ideas, we're joined by two visionaries at the forefront of this movement. Dr. Michelle Ament, who is leading the human intelligence movement and challenging the status quo by advocating for an education system centered on skills no machine can replicate, and Chris Allen, an AI evangelist and CEO of CareerHacks.ai, is bridging the gap between technology and humanity, making AI accessible and actionable for educators and leaders alike. Together, they'll share their insights on the urgent need to rethink education, the role of community and policy in driving change, and how we can empower students to succeed in an AI world. So settle in and get ready for an inspiring conversation. And it's all coming up next on Classroom Dynamics, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. AI can save teachers time, but what if it could do more? With Your Way, AI is built specifically for your school or district, aligning cutting-edge technology with your instructional goals, strategies, and vision. Empower teachers to personalize instruction, create engaging lessons, and implement innovative practices, all while saving time for what matters most. Why settle for one-size-fits-all AI? Customize and build your way safely and seamlessly. Discover AI that works your way at yourwaylearning.com. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that needs a lot of attention, and to do just that, I'd like to introduce our featured guest today, Dr. Michelle Ament of ProSolve and the Human Intelligence Movement, and Chris Allen, an AI evangelist dedicated to fusing technology and humanity together. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us on Classroom Dynamics. It's so great to have you guys on such a topic that is going to just, I'm sure, explode over the next couple of months to years.
It's great to be here, Adam.
Dr. Ament, you recently appeared on our Hot Topics episode where human intelligence came up a lot. Before we begin, explain to everyone what human intelligence is and what teachers have to understand when it comes to AI use and how that actually crisscrosses in their lives.
That's a great question, Adam. So when we think about human intelligence, we think about the uniquely human skills that AI cannot replicate. And as we live in this AI integrated world, we need to really be prioritizing and ensuring that everyone, but especially our students, are equipped with these unique skills. And so the human intelligence movement has defined these uniquely human skills in three categories. One is social emotional competencies, cognitive competencies, and adaptability competencies. And what I mean by that is the ability to have a real authentic conversation with someone, to really be able to listen and respond with empathy. That's a uniquely human skill. To be able to ask questions and thought-provoking inquiry questions. And that's a uniquely human skill, and one that is really, really important in an AI integrated world, to be able to ask AI questions to get the answers and solve the problems that you're looking for. Another competency that's just really important in today's world are those adaptability competencies, this ability to learn and unlearn new things as our world is rapidly changing, the ability to be self-efficacious and self-aware, and really feel like you can be empowered to make change and utilize AI in a way that really helps you to amplify your human potential. And so I think, that's how the human intelligence movement defines these competencies. And as we continue to evolve in this AI integrated world, what we are advocating for in our schools is just really amplifying the need to prioritize and focus on these human skills.
So when we talk about those human skills like creativity, empathy, and like you just mentioned, adaptability, how can those skills then be prioritized in the classroom?
That's a great question, Adam. And I think, first of all, it really starts with our education system. Our teachers work so hard day in and day out to do their very best for every student in the classroom. But I believe our education system is really stuck in a traditional, outdated factory-like model.
It is.
Where we continue to put the teacher on the front of the room, disseminating information and knowledge so that they can, by the end of the year, have students' potential measured by a standardized assessment. And then we report these numbers out and talk about this school is better than that school, or this district is excelling. And it just is a continued outdated practice that our system as a whole needs to change. And so when I think about what a classroom looks like in a system that has really evolved to be one that is really human-centered, a school environment that allows for student-driven learning and through experiential practices. And so really what that means is project-based learning. It means experiential learning, opportunities for students to solve real-world problems, contribute value to their world, and through that really own their learning. That's going to create resiliency. It's going to create self-efficacy. It's going to establish agency. All of those things are those human skills that we're going to need in our AI integrated world. Not to mention, we just need to all really get back to being human-centered and have that human connection. Because if we don't begin to prioritize that, I'm really fearful of how AI will continue to explode and potentially start to replace some of that human connection. And I think, I'd look to Chris to really expand on some of the societal impact that will come if we don't really focus in on how to build these human-centered, student-driven classrooms.
Yeah, I almost feel like AI has become a fad of sorts, right? Where everyone's hearing about it. They all want to try it. A lot of it they like, some of it they may not, but a lot of it they like. They see where it could go positively in their classroom. But at the same time, you mentioned something important, which was that standardized test end game. That's where we all have to let go and stop. I've tried this year more than ever to give kids more choice, to make it more personalized for them, to give them that experiential learning where it almost becomes a point where it's so hard to explain, because you have to see, when I tell them you can choose your topic, you can choose the program you want to do to create it, you can pick the people you want to work with, they don't almost know what to do. There is this very weird look that I get, like, are you serious? You're going to let us do that? And when I do, and they get to do that, the work actually comes out better. There's more involvement, there's more creativity, and just overall, it's just a better experience. So I've actually seen that, and that didn't take me very long to let go. I always felt like I could, give them choice, and I have in the past. So this was just taking another step. So let's get to Chris. So Chris, as artificial intelligence, as that starts to grow, as we just were saying, and exploding, you're an artificial intelligence evangelist. So you often talk about the balance between leveraging AI and maintaining humanity's unique role. So
Yes.
how can educators then ensure that teachers and students see AI as a tool to enhance, right? Not necessarily to do the work for them, but just to enhance their potential rather to take away their individuality and take away their freedom in doing that. How do you explain that?
No, it's a great question, and it's probably the most important question, right? That we're faced with right now. And I just want to paint a big picture for you here. Humanity is at a crossroads right now. It is a crossroads that we have never been to before. The closest thing I could describe to the crossroads that we are currently in would be the Gutenberg press, probably, because you know how changing that was. But this is 10 times bigger than that moment in history. And, if humanity doesn't get this right, it's going to be a real problem because the speed at which artificial intelligence is evolving is beyond anything we could fathom. And so that there's definitely cause for concern. Now, here's the other side of that coin. If we get it right, we're going to be able to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. We're going to create a world that is beyond anything we could imagine. But the key, the cornerstone, the only way that's going to happen is this human intelligence movement that we're talking about, which is really waking people up to their humanity again. And we have to start looking at, okay, AI is here. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to get bigger, better, faster everywhere around the world. You cannot put it back. You cannot stop it. So we have to embrace it. And if we're embracing it, then we have to figure out, okay, what's the role that artificial intelligence is going to play? And what's the role humanity is going to play? And when we look at that and we step back and we look at the human intelligence evolution, right? I love the beginning of 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? Because that was the dawn, right, of intelligence and human intelligence. And we just kind of, it grew from there. And now we're creating machines that are smarter than us. I mean, think about what that means. I mean, and then you got the open the pod bay door south, right? For those of us that are, that remember that 2001 Space Odyssey, and we're there, right? We're now going to start trusting artificial intelligence with decisions, life and death decisions, right? So this is just a very important moment. So to answer your question, the human intelligence movement is about identifying those human traits like adaptability, collaboration, communication, leadership skills, emotional intelligence. These are things that humans have to bring to the table. Innovation, the curiosity, the ability to ask the questions and be curious. And because we're in a world right now where if you have a phone and you've got ChatGPT or whatever you pick your flavor, you are the smartest person in the room, period, if you know how to ask the right questions, right? And so the power of your questions, the power of your curiosity, the power of your ability to think outside the box and try to solve complex problems, and that's what's going to be the magic. That's where we're going to see this shift. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to have to completely retool, reinvent, reimagine education, and it has to be centered in the human intelligence principles. And it has to really look deeply at the role that AI is going to play and what AI does well, and then stop trying to cram that kind of training and teaching into kids, because you're teaching them to compete with something that they can never compete with. Memorizing and regurgitating facts and figures is not going to be a thing that they're ever going to be able to beat AI at.
Especially if it's in their pocket and at their fingertips.
Exactly. And so we have to catch the wave, not get crushed by the wave. And so I'm very excited about working with Michelle and the human intelligence movement and, really getting this message out, because the stakes could not be higher.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've seen it with elementary school kids. I started working on with fourth and fifth graders. They're creating digital books using Book Creator, which is a fantastic program. They've been on our podcast, and I asked them to start to create some story. It could be anything. It could be fictional, it could be nonfiction, it could be poems. I really gave them any choice that they wanted, any size book, any kind, whatever they wanted to do. And one of the kids in fourth grade this week, I happened to notice when I walked by, was on ChatGPT. Now, I don't have a curriculum for that because we just don't have a curriculum yet. So,
Right.
we talked, we chatted a little bit, and I had to get it across where don't let it do your work, but you want to dabble in it to see what ideas you might get from it. That's okay. And then I thought maybe I should stop the class and tell everyone. Then I said, you know what? Nope. I'm not ready. I don't want to open that Pandora's box right now. One of the kids was doing it. He knew how to use it. He was trying it. I didn't want to open that door. And that's the problem right now. You're almost at a ledge, right? You're
Yeah.
at the edge of a mountain, and you don't know if you want to take that jump because the parachute's going to work, or you're going to take that jump and the parachute's not going to work. So what do you say to a kid who in that situation is technically using it correctly, but a teacher doesn't want to make it a thing, right? There's a hard stop there. What do you do?
Yeah, well, and that's the dilemma that we're in, and that's why the fundamental change that Michelle's talking about with this human intelligence movement to shift it is so necessary. Because if we don't, you're going to be in that. So teachers are in that. They're in that.
All the time.
And it's not fair to them. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to the kids. I just there was an article that I saw that was just heartbreaking. A kid had used ChatGPT, and one of his papers was there was no policy against it. The school didn't have a policy against it, but they labeled him a cheater, and he's now is going to have trouble getting into any of the college that he wanted to go to. But here's the irony: the rule followers, the ones that did everything, that didn't use any of these tools that are out there, who's going to be more successful in the world that's coming? Actually, the world that's already here. It's going to be the one that leveraged every tool possible to accomplish their objective. What's the fastest way to solve for X?
Mhm.
Right? That's and if you and how do I use all the tools that I have in my fingertips to produce value for the company that I work for the society I live in, for the country I'm in? How do I have maximum impact? And so the collaboration with and communication skills, both this is something we need to be teaching. So it's so important, because not only do we need these kids communicating with each other, right? Not their phones, right? Not that,
Right.
but actually having real conversations. Not only do we need that, but those same skills will translate when they're talking and collaborating with artificial intelligence, right? So just these are the things that have to happen. So if I'm a teacher, I'm kind of a rebel, so I'm probably going to push the envelope and try to help kids get where they need to get, and then do everything in my power to move the needle, and that's what the human intelligence movement is all about, is to try to, at every level, the grassroots level, at the ground, the teachers, the students, the parents, right? Let's get them all engaged, because it's probably going to take a ground up movement to wake them up and get from the top down, to get their attention, to make the fundamental shifts we have to make. It's not a should we, it's like we're
It's a
there.
how do we do it? I'm
And how
glad
do
you
we do
actually
it
mentioned
fast?
that. Yeah, no, it's a great point, because even with parents, parents very often will ask me my opinion, and they take my opinion seriously, and they value it. And very often I'll say to them, listen, at some point, we're going to have to teach them how to use it, because
Yeah.
if they're not using it, they're going to fall behind, because they're not going to know how. How do
Yes.
you prompt it to get what you want so that you could do the human portion of it, right? Use the
Yes.
AI as that, I don't want to say a crutch, but that starting point,
Right.
just that starting point. We're going to have to teach them. Otherwise, where are you going with it? But let's go back to like traditional education for a second. Let's tie this all back again. So traditional education has long been rooted in standardized test scores. And as we said, rote memorization. We've been talking about it already today. How do we move beyond this system to create an educational framework that fosters human intelligence? And then what challenges might we face in making that shift? Now we have to go backwards again, not really backwards, but maybe do an about face for a little bit to backtrack to get to that point. So where do we go?
Well, Adam, I think about this question a lot as we try to change a system that is difficult work. And one of the things that the human intelligence movement is dedicated to is really amplifying the voices of the industry leaders and workforce businesses, partners, to really say what are the skills that students need and what are they lacking. There's some pretty scary statistics out there. One of the stats that I've recently read that is really scary around this is the fact that approximately 80% of Gen Z employees or Gen Z generation are at risk for getting fired or let go of their first jobs because they are lacking the human skills that are needed in the workforce. And some of that is really ownership, drive, self-efficacy, agency, not to mention some of the skills around communication and collaboration. And I see that firsthand. I have 3 Gen Zers that are young adults, and I see the gap in those human skills. And so with the human intelligence movement, one of the things that we are doing is really trying to work with business leaders to say, what are the skills that you need today in students? And amplifying that and creating a framework around what does this look like so that we can help educational systems really see what is needed in today's workforce so that they can begin to reprioritize and change the emphasis of what they're doing in their schools. And I think from a systems level, some of that it really comes down to funding and prioritization at a federal level. And so our work at the Human Intelligence Movement is around advocating for policy change. I think tackling policy at a federal level can be daunting at times. And so really working with individual school districts to think about how do you begin to prioritize like a portrait of a graduate, and how do you start to measure those skills and really hold yourselves accountable to doing that. Now, by no means am I advocating for a standardized measure of human skills. It's not a one-for-one replacement. It's about de-emphasizing those standardized assessments that measure human potential and instead looking for alternative competency-based measures around the human skills and starting to put emphasis and value in that at an organizational level. So at a district level, we've got a lot of states like New York who are thinking about and planning for a portrait of a graduate at a state level. And so behind that needs to come some funding so that school districts can purchase products and allow for professional development and all of those things. They need resources to make this change. So I think there's that idea. I think another thing that I'll offer around thinking about how to lead this change is really creating those pockets of innovation in a school, in a district, so that teachers can experiment and try something new, try project-based learning, put together an experiential learning unit and begin to see how you can teach standards while at the same time building human intelligence. And I think too often we get ourselves locked into a very traditional approach to teaching. And I think that if teachers were given the freedom and autonomy to do it differently, they would gravitate towards that. But I think there's so much fear in our system that if we don't do it this way, if we don't cram information down kids' throats, if we don't have a focus on the end product, then we won't be successful. And so giving that opportunity for teachers to really experiment and try different things and still be looking at the impact that has on student learning. And I know we will see that kids still are learning. And in fact, there's a deeper sense of learning because now you've created a student-driven atmosphere where they own that learning. And you even said so yourself, Adam, when you introduce that to students, they kind of are a little bit surprised, but their learning actually is deeper and goes further at that place. So I think those are a couple of things that come to mind for me. There's definitely just a system as a whole work to be done, and the human intelligence movement is really targeting that. And it's also at a site level and at a district level about giving some freedom and autonomy, some opportunity to experiment and try different things, and really hold that student at the center.
It's almost a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you are going to go ahead and give them that freedom, a teacher is going to say, okay, but I have to, and to your point, go through my checklist of today so I make sure that my lessons are being done so that I get to the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the unit, the end of the next unit. You know what I'm saying? And then to the test itself. I mean, that's the end point. So, but at the same time, they want to give that freedom, but then they say to themselves, I can't. So I know teachers are hearing me say this and heard what you just said and thinking the exact same thing. I would love to, but I can't. And when I can, I feel guilty because I didn't, it's such a hard, you can't win. You're painted into a corner constantly. And it is unfair to teachers. It really is. We're going to take a quick break. More with Dr. Michelle Ament and Chris Allen right after this. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Classroom Dynamics is supported by Higher Ground Gear, featuring the Shuttle 3.0 CS laptop case. Built for students on the move, the Shuttle 3.0 offers 24/7 protection by letting you work directly out of the case. Just open it and go. Its sleek molded design keeps laptops cool, secure, and always ready. And with shock-absorbing corners for drop defense, a grip deck, corner straps to hold your device in place, and clean shell fabric that resists spills and wipes down easily to fight germs, it's protection that never quits. For more, visit hggear.com today. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Dr. Ament, let's talk about building community, because when you talk about the human intelligence movement, I think that goes hand in hand, right? So how are you bridging together those diverse groups that educators all talk about, like other teachers, policymakers, corporate partnerships that are out there? All those come together to drive meaningful change in education. When you talk about all the human intelligence in there, teachers are using AI. Why can't students? Teachers are being taught how to use artificial intelligence to do lesson plans, to cut down some of the paperwork, to not cut corners, but to get there faster. Why not teach the kids how to do the same thing, so that, as to your point earlier, when they get to the workplace, that's something that's already infused. So how do we get everyone together community-wise to make that happen eventually one day down the line?
That's a great question. And when I think about the human intelligence movement, one of our key areas is creating community. We have over 700 members as part of this movement: educators, industry leaders, district leaders, ed tech specialists, and consultants, all coming together to really be a professional learning community, bringing their brilliant ideas to solve wicked problems in education. And we, as a movement, what we do is we offer sessions, member mingles, where you can network with one another. We offer the Evolving Education Workshop, where it is a professional development to learn from each other, all the way to just informal chats in our Slack group, where you're constantly learning. And what I have seen happen with that is, when you bring 700 like minds, to brilliant minds, all kind of thinking and passionate about the same thing together, you can really make some significant change. And so the human intelligence movement has put out their position paper as an advocacy tool to really be able for teachers to advocate for more human intelligence, or principals to advocate, or superintendents, whomever needs to really tell that story about the importance of human skills for our AI world. We're going to be working on establishing this framework that really guides school districts in what the competencies are for these uniquely human skills. And we're looking for everyone in this organization to contribute and co-design this together. So I think as a result, we're going to start to really be able to make some significant change when you bring people together. And I think there's a parallel to to what we need to do in our education system around community. And when you talk about that question of how will we get to a point where students are using AI, I think it begins with bringing stakeholders together in community conversations, parents, grandparents, teachers, students, especially at the table, industry and business leaders in your community, to really start to talk about what does AI look like in today's world? What are the skills that our students will need? And really hear from students about what they need around learning how to use AI. And usually what I found is when you start with a conversation that's very human-centered and you're able to collect empathy and learn from one another, the answer emerges. And so it will be different for each district on how they start to bring AI to the student level. But starting with those kinds of conversation inform then the guidance and the policy around the use. What we don't want to do is see a school board put policy in place without ever talking to a student or a teacher or a community member, which I think happens far too much in our world. And so really starting with those community conversations, because like the human intelligence movement is working to solve problems in education, you can create that same community feel in your district to really tackle some of these problems that you're talking about.
Are either of you surprised that there isn't a more solid foundational curriculum that's being written on AI, or is it that it's evolving so fast that it's hard to do that?
I am not surprised because it is evolving and I think people don't know what to do. I also think that I just recently saw Dr. Saba Kidwai Designing Schools organization put out a student-centered, a student-facing curriculum. And it's like one of the first that I've seen. And the other thing I think about in all of this is that there is an identity crisis happening right now in education. What we've known to be true is no longer true. And so I think educators and administrators don't really know what to do with this identity crisis, because the teacher has always been the dissemination of information. That was our role. Like, figure out how to equip kids with the knowledge and the skills that they need. And that is what made a successful graduate. And that is completely flipped on its head when we think about AI and having the answer in your pocket at all times. And so I think that's where that whole using AI for cheating and all of these things are coming up, because we're continuing to think about this in the same mental model worldview of education. And we've got to completely change our identity of what education looks like. And that, I think, will start to, once we do that, it will start to inform some of the gaps that we're seeing. But it's like square peg, round hole. We're trying to do the same thing we've always done.
It's not fitting anymore.
It's not fitting. So,
I mean,
Chris, what would you add? Or
before Chris goes, and I think I'm going to actually pose this to Chris because I think he's the perfect person to answer this. So technology, right? This is the problem with technology. Technology can be so good that it all of a sudden makes teachers feel like they have to do more, or it makes districts feel like teachers could do more, right? And that's the problem. Just because you have the technology as a tool to allow you to do more doesn't mean that more is going to be better. There's the problem. And then so teachers will say, okay, well, I'm going to use AI to write all my lesson plans for the next unit because I don't have time and I can't go home after teaching all day with that kind of energy to create lesson plans for my next unit. So it's, again, there's this constant battle. It's pushing against the teacher, the technology, the AI, the tools, and the teacher is pushing back and saying, well, I have to use this because of that. It's a dog chasing their tail constantly, and it doesn't end. So how would you explain that to teachers? Am I hitting that on the head?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, there's no question. And just to play off of kind of what Michelle was talking about, because this is exactly where I was going to go too, but I want to paint a picture for you here. So remember when the internet came online and Google came online, right? And so what that was in the education system was a little bit of an earthquake, right? Because the ground was moving, it was not stable. All of a sudden, kids could go Google things, and now all of a sudden we're talking about we got to figure out how to ask questions that Google can't answer because the kids are going to cheat, and oh no, the world's falling to everything. And so that was just a little quake. That was just a little earthquake that we had to get. And so what we did was we just basically we tried to solve the problem. We didn't change the core education system, would probably been a good time to do that. But we didn't do that. So we just put the Band-Aid over. We needed a tourniquet and we needed to completely sever it and, redesign it, reimagine it. But we didn't. We just created tools on top of tools and just kept that system. And so we figured out how to stand, and kind of keep going through the motions while the earthquake and the movement underneath our feet was happening.
And now we have AI.
There is no ground. That's where we are. The ground is completely gone. They don't know what to do, and they don't know what to do at the top, and they don't know what to do in the middle, and they don't know what to do at the bottom. They don't know. All they know is that there's no more ground. And so you've got teachers struggling, you've got, industries struggling, trying to figure out what does this mean for us? You've got, the school boards it is literally, that is the moment we're in. There is no ground. And if there is no ground, then what does that mean? And this is why it is such a critical moment in humanity's history, right?
Right.
To get this right, because we do have amazing human skills that cannot be replicated by artificial intelligence. And we're going to hear this. We're going to hear people are going to be getting displaced. There's going to be job loss. Now there's going to be new jobs created, but there's going to be tons of jobs lost. And every industry is going to have to go through a fundamental change. And education, the challenge with education is it's the most important one to get right. It's the only opportunity we have to reach the next generation and prepare them for the world that they're going into. And yet it's the most biggest, challenging, most difficult one to pivot. Not just to pivot, but to pivot faster and quicker than it ever has before, and in a fundamentally different way.
At least in a chess game, you can look at the pieces and you can think for a little while. This is the opposite, where the chess pieces are moving faster, and then you can make the next decision because you don't know where it's going to go.
Exactly. That is a great example.
Right. You hit the nail on the head too with the workforce of tomorrow, because it's going to look completely different. And it's the kids today that are more, I would say, in elementary school today, right now, presently, that it's going to affect the most. I think the kids who are in middle school and high school, certainly in college, this is transforming around them. So what specific steps do schools take, especially at the elementary level, so that they can prepare those kids for careers? Okay, so we're talking about, 5 to 10-year-olds. We have to start thinking of careers for those kids.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's going to shift the most.
And how do we do that when we don't even know what those careers are, right?
Because that's the problem.
So I love what Michelle said about experiment. School districts need to open up labs, right? They need to say, okay, we have no ground, so let's find the innovators. Let's find the people who are willing, people like you that have a podcast like this that's trying to get the word out, right? Let's bring those people together and say, okay, we don't know. We don't know where the ground is. We need your help to find it. And we're going to do it together. And we're going to build community. And we're going to bring teachers and grandparents and parents. And we're going to bring them all together. And we're going to try stuff, right? We're going to do stuff. Because the one thing that we cannot afford to do right now is, out of fear of it, or fear of not doing it the way we're supposed to, following the rules.
Right, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's the biggest danger that we could face, right? Because then we watch this go by, this wave crushes us, and now AI is a juggernaut, and we're not prepared, and humanity's not prepared, and we haven't prepared the next generation with the humanity and the tools that they're going to need to leverage and wield a tool that powerful. I mean, how do you wield a tool that's more powerful and more intelligent than you are?
Yeah.
Very carefully.
A friend of mine kind of equated AI to Indiana Jones running from the giant ball that was chasing him after he got the idol. So, and it's a good way to look at it, because he's just running for his life.
Right.
And I feel like teachers are starting to do that, because like you said, there's no ground. So where do you go? You can go in one of 360 degrees of a direction, and you don't really know if you're really going in the correct direction.
Yeah, so that's why you join a community like the Human Intelligence Movement, where you're around the people that are going to like really solve a lot of these world problems. And then here's what this is my message to everybody, right? I don't care if what you're hearing is connecting and you know that something has to happen. I'm just going to ask you to start where you are, in this moment. Like if you're a teacher, don't be afraid. The ground's going anyway. Experiment.
Got nothing to lose.
You got nothing to lose, and you're probably going to get recognized for solving it or creating something. And yes, is it risky? Is it scary? Yes. But you know what? We got to feel it and do it anyway, right? If you're a parent, get involved, right? Get your kids involved. You need to become, using artificial intelligence so that you can then pass that on to your children. So, no matter where you are at this moment, there is something you can do to help humanity get in the driver's seat and get this ship, this big ship, this education juggernaut, get it to pivot and turn. And we're going to have to do it at every level. We're going to have to do it at the engine level, at, the steering wheel, everything, all of it, because it's not going to happen if we try to do it from the top down. It's not going to happen if it only comes from the bottom up. It's going to have to be all hands on deck.
Right.
And so we just got to start. We got to do it, even though it's scary.
Educators are building the plane as we're flying it at the same time, trying to figure out how we don't take it down because we don't want AI to take it over.
Yeah.
We're going to take another quick break. More with Dr. Michelle Levin and Chris Allen right after this. We'll be right back. Teachers, are you looking for resources that spark creativity and inspire learning? Look no further than Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers. From comprehensive lesson plans and interactive lab books to engaging informational test prep passages, Highly Motivated has everything you need to keep your students motivated and excited to learn. Whether it's a quick activity or a full unit, these resources are designed to save you time and help students succeed. Highly Motivated, motivating teaching resources that engage and inspire. Search Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers today. Every classroom has the potential to be extraordinary, and the Logitech Reach Adjustable Content Camera is your partner in making that happen. With its flexible arm and clear video, you can showcase everything from detailed drawings to live experiments, ensuring every student is engaged and involved. Whether you're teaching in person or online, Logitech Reach helps you connect with your students in a whole new way. Ready to take your lessons further? Visit logitech.com/reach and elevate your classroom to a whole new level. Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. We are in a fantastic conversation today about AI, human intelligence, how they all come together. For either of you, we'll go through both of you. If you could give educators one piece of advice or words of wisdom about incorporating AI tools into their teaching somehow, some way, all the while maintaining that human intelligence aspect, what words of wisdom could you possibly give them? Because we are in a hard spot now, but what could you say to them to let them feel a little bit more comfortable and to kind of come out of their shell a little bit?
Well, Adam, I think of one word of advice would be to just try something. And I know that sounds really simple, but even starting in your personal life, like using Perplexity to ask a question, ask for a recipe. I just used, hey, Perplexity, give me a wild rice recipe and don't have any cream in it. And it produced a really well thought out recipe for me in a matter of seconds. And so like that use, when you just start using it on a daily basis in your personal life, then you start to think about applications in the classroom. And so using ChatGPT to just brainstorm. You could even say, put together I'm on meals all of a sudden, but like put together a meal plan and tell me the ingredients I need. And if you just start using it in a personal way, then you'll start to see ways to transfer it to the classroom. And so I would just suggest, if it's daunting to think how to use it for instruction, you'll start to see those ways if you get comfortable with it in a daily setting. Adam, I know you asked for teacher advice, but I got to give administrators some advice too, if that's okay.
You know what? Absolutely, because they're all part of the chain. And if the administrators, right, it's a great point, because if the administrators don't wrap their minds around it, how are they going to expect their school to do it, right?
Yeah, because my next piece of advice is on really making sure you're prioritizing teaching human skills, creating the conditions in your classroom so that students can build human intelligence. And I think teachers set out day in and day out to do that. And as administrators, we put barriers and limitations in place. And so my advice to district administrators or principals is to find those entry points for where teachers can build human skills, whether it is project-based learning or experiential learning, or whether it is a really focused, dedicated curriculum to skill building. You know, you mentioned I'm the chief academic officer for ProSolve. We have a K-5 human skills curriculum, and it is experiential based, it is game based, it is so fun and engaging for kids, but it is unique in that there isn't anything out there for educators to use to really build those human skills, those skills of collaboration, negotiation, the ability to be in conflict resolution in a way that's really authentic for kids. And so my advice is, you know, give teachers the space and also the resources and tools they need. I went into this profession because I love kids and because I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. And I would guess 99.9% of teachers had that same drive. And so if we just equip them with the time and the space and the resources to really do that, it's just going to come naturally. And I think our whole profession has really moved away from that human-centered approach to learning. I call it the art of teaching. And we've bogged teachers down with this scope and sequence and cover the content and get to the test, which has really taken the life out of teachers. And I think is a result of that burnout that we are seeing. And so I think all of this advice wrapped into a lot of problems to solve with this advice that I'm giving. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
No, that was great, and I would agree with you, Michelle. The fight fear and anxiety with play, because anytime we do anything new, if you know, you may have not, as a teacher, you may have not done a whole lot with artificial intelligence, and you may be a little intimidated or fearful or concerned, or you know, and there's all kinds of reasons to be concerned and fearful, right? It's not like they're not out there. They are, but that fear is debilitating and could cause a lot more problems. However, if we can just play with stuff, right? Like recipes is a great example, you know, have fun with it and start to experiment. And it absolutely will open up, because you'll be thinking, oh my gosh, if it could do this, what if it could do this? And then what if it could do that? And then, oh, I want to ask this question. And it's just like all of a sudden you're not afraid of this anymore. You're actually enjoying it. You're learning and growing from it. And then you start to think about, okay, how can I bring this into the classroom? How can I help kids understand how to use this responsibly in a creative, fun way? But also, you know, show them the dangers of letting it do all the work for you. Because if it does everything for you, then what are you learning, right? How are you growing? So figuring out that formula and not waiting. And that's the other thing I would say for teachers. We can't wait. We can't wait for the administrators. We can't wait for the federal government to wake up and go, okay, this is what we're going to do, or the state, you know, to go, okay, this is the answer. We might not even like the answers that they give us anyway. So instead, what we've got to do is be the change now, here in this moment, and do what we can to help move things, to help humanity find its footing and find the ground, because the ground is out there. It's just that right now we don't know where it is, right? And we're going to learn that together, and AI is going to be a part of that. So you know,
it's a perfect, what the both of you hit on it so perfectly, and using it in your life first. I remember when Google Drive came out first, and I just started to use it for work and started to think, wait a second, kids are going to be using this one day. They have to use this one day. There's no reason why they shouldn't be using this one day. And I started to teach them how to do it before it was a thing, just because that was my experience. And it goes back to what Michelle, what you said before was, you know, experiential learning. It happens with the adults too. So why not then transfer it down into the kids when they see it can be transferred and there is use, right? There's a positivity to it.
Yeah, you're modeling, right? You're modeling the behavior of being curious, playing, having fun and learning about something, right? And now you're sharing that with them. Now they're having the opportunity. You just modeled that behavior.
Right. Real world applications sometimes work out better than what the curriculum has us do.
Yeah, well said.
So thank you guys. This has been fantastic. As we wrap up today's discussion, it's clear that the future of education lies in equipping students with the uniquely human skills that machines can't replicate, which is creativity, empathy, adaptability, and problem solving. The human intelligence movement is not just a vision, it's a call to action for educators, for policymakers, and for communities to come together and rethink what it means to prepare students for an AI-driven world. I just want to thank both of you guys, Dr. Michelle Ament and Chris Allen, today for sharing your expertise, your passion, and helping to transform education. Because as you said, this definitely is a crossroad, and we are definitely at a point where we have to pivot. And obviously together, we can ensure that every learner is ready to thrive in the future. Before we go, just tell everyone a little bit where they can find out more about ProSolve and the Human Intelligence Movement.
Certainly. So for the Human Intelligence Movement, you can go to humanintelligencemovement.org. You can also find us on LinkedIn, very active opportunity there to join us as a member. And to learn more about ProSolve, it's just prosolve.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions. You can reach out to me directly as well.
Well, for those of you who have been listening, thank you for tuning in today, and make sure that you share what you've learned or any takeaways or reflections that you've had. You can tag us on X at Class Dynamics or Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. You can also find out all of our links, including information about our sponsors, on Linktree at Classroom Dynamics. And as always, we look forward to hearing your thoughts on our episodes and sharing the different ways in which you're using what you've learned. You can also help support Classroom Dynamics with as little as $3 a month at classroomdynamicspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Ament and Chris Allen for joining us today on Classroom Dynamics. What great information, amazing perspective, and look, artificial intelligence, as we said, it's not going anywhere. It's just growing faster than we can keep up with. So thank you for your input today. I think teachers all around the world are going to take what you have said and the advice that you've given and really take it and run with it. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Adam.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Classroom Dynamics, where knowledge and inspiration meets innovation. I hope you've enjoyed today's discussion and found it both insightful and uplifting. As always, my goal is to provide you with practical strategies, engaging stories, and powerful insights that can fuel your motivation as an educator. I believe when knowledge and inspiration do come together, incredible things can happen in your classroom. And for all of you who think it's too late to strengthen your craft, I challenge you to make it your mission to do so. You've worked hard to get to where you are today, and it's never too late to infuse new life into your work. So why not make today that day to do so? I'm Adam Todd, and you've been listening to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. You can follow Classroom Dynamics on X at Class Dynamics and on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. If you haven't already, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'll be back soon with more captivating conversations, inspiring stories, and strategies that you can implement into your everyday routines. Until then, keep igniting that spark in your classroom and never stop believing in the incredible impact that you have as an educator. You're more powerful and inspirational than you think. Did you miss our Recycling Revolution episode with Ryan Hickman? Well, if so, in this inspiring episode, we sat down with 15-year-old Ryan Hickman, a recycling advocate and founder of Ryan's Recycling and Project 3R, a non-for-profit organization dedicated to recycling and environmental awareness and education around the world. Discover how a simple trip to a recycling center sparked Ryan's mission to save the planet one bottle and can at a time. So get ready to be informed and inspired by Ryan's incredible story and powerful message.
Well, I always just tell people, like I said earlier, just start small. Every little bit makes a big difference. So if you see a piece of trash on the ground, pick it up. I do beach cleanups every weekend. You don't need to live near a beach to make a difference. Clean up a park, a gutter in your street, a local community area. Like I go camping sometimes. I always bring a trash grabber, gloves, and a bag and pick up trash there. It's not matter where you are, just pick up a little trash. It makes a big difference. I always try telling people that. And I just hope people are inspired and learn and want to help out the planet.